Welcome to English Without Limits. Now, why would I be holding a package of food and a bottle of water? In today's lesson, we're going to learn about weight and volume. These are how we measure things. When we go to buy food, very often we have to say how much we want. Or some other things we buy, like gasoline, we have to say how much, and we need to know how to measure it by weight or by volume. I hope you enjoy the lesson. In our last lesson, we learned how to form the future progressive tense. Let's review that a little bit now. To form the future simple tense, you simply add the auxiliary will to the base form of the verb. That's the future simple tense. The future progressive tense we form by adding the auxiliary will be to the verb and then adding ing to the end. That's how we form it. And do you remember what it means? When we have the future progressive tense, the thing that is going on, the event, we look at it as if it was a long thing taking some time, and another event connects with it. Remember, most of the time we are talking about two things, and we're discussing how they connect with each other. We would be saying something like, I will be eating dinner when you come over. So we have a sentence with two clauses. The first clause is in the future progressive. Remember, I will be eating dinner. The second clause is in the present simple. You come over. So let's practice this again. Just as we did in the last lesson, I will give you two short statements on the screen, both in the present. And you must take those two statements, put them together into a single sentence. The first clause in the sentence must be in the future progressive tense, and the second one would be in the present simple. For example, if I give you the two statements, I play football and you come here, I would say a sentence like, I will be playing football when you come here. All right? I will pause after each set of statements, and you can formulate your answer, and then I will give the correct answer. All right? Are you ready? Let's begin. I live with you. I buy a bike. Please form a sentence in the future progressive using both clauses. I will be living with you when I buy a bike. I drive my car. I see a store. I will be driving my car when I see a store. I teach music. The phone rings. I will be teaching music when the phone rings. I paint my house. My uncle comes over. I will be painting my house when my uncle comes over. Marta lies in bed. Her mother leaves for work. Marta will be lying in bed when her mother leaves for work. Mei Lin sits in a tree. Her teacher calls her. Mei Lin will be sitting in a tree when her teacher calls her. Andreas walks on the beach. He finds a shell. Andreas will be walking on the beach when he finds a shell. Sasha eats his supper. The TV show comes on. Sasha will be eating his supper when the TV show comes on. When you go to buy some kinds of things, you need to tell them how much you want. And when you're buying something that's a solid, say food for example, like rice or coffee, sometimes you need to say how much you want. When we do that, we measure it in kilograms or grams. A kilogram is the unit of measure that's about this much. This food, this pasta, weighs about 1 kilogram. And so if you're going to buy something like flour or coffee or pasta, you would buy it in kilograms. If you're buying something that you don't need very much of, like spices, for example, with spice you might only get a little amount, so you would measure it in grams. There are 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. And so if you want a lot of something, you buy it in kilograms. If you just want a little bit, you buy it in grams. The same thing with liquid. This is 1 liter of water. If you're buying some liquids like gasoline or milk or water, you would buy it by the liter, 1 liter or more. But then if you just want a small amount of something, like certain kinds of food flavoring, or certain kinds of other things, or drugs, for example, they are liquid, but they measure them by a small amount, 1 milliliter. There are 1,000 milliliters in 1 liter. So, for example, when you're taking a drug, you might take it in a syringe like this. This syringe holds 30 milliliters. 30 milliliters. So a milliliter is a very small amount. When we are buying certain kinds of things, we need to know how to measure it by weight. If it's a solid, we say, how heavy is it? What is the weight? 1 kilogram. If it's a liquid, we say, how big is it? What is the volume? So let's join the class as they begin to learn about measuring things by weight or volume.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about volume and weight. Does anybody know what that is?
How do you spell?
Pardon?
How do you spell?
Volume? I'll write it up here on the board. Volume and weight.
Volume is one of the new voice.
It's
We can calculate the
We're talking about measurements
Yes.
when we're measuring things. When we're measuring liquid, we call it that volume. Something solid, we call it weight. Like when we were measuring liquids, we call that volume, and solids, we refer to it as weight. So what would be something solid that we could use? What would be something solid? Like a book? We weigh it by weight. What about something we measure by volume? It has to be a liquid. What's a liquid? Liquid is like water or milk or gasoline, like juice. Yeah. So we use it for, we're going to talk about a kilogram right now. What is a kilogram?
It's 1,000 grams.
Very good. 1,000 grams, right. So when we're measuring solid, we use kilogram. Like this here, we're going to pass this around. Everybody weigh it. This weighs exactly 1 kilogram. So you have the idea what 1 kilogram feels like. And then you pass it on to Lena. So that's approximately 1 kilogram. And is it solid or is it a liquid? Remember what a liquid is? Solid, right. And a gram weighs very little. Like Dima said, 1 kilogram equals 1,000 grams. So a gram doesn't weigh very much. Yeah, 1 kilogram. Now a liter. How do we measure a liter? What do we use? Do we use volume? Because a liter is a liquid. Like this here is 1 liter. See 1 liter? Yeah, that's 1 liter. Okay? We call that liquids a liter. Like what else would we call a liter? Milk? Water? Tea? A liter of tea? Or we would say a cup of tea. Yeah. A cup of coffee. We don't. Maybe if we're serving a bunch of people, we do a liter of tea, but we more call it a cup of tea. Yeah. Okay. And then there's millimeters. Who knows what a millimeter is? Milliliters. Yeah, I'll write it up here. So we did kilogram. We did grams. What am I going to do? So milliliter. What is milliliter used for? Do we measure a solid or do we measure a liquid? Pardon? Water? Yep.
Milk for a baby.
Milk's very good. Because they eat very little? Yeah. Maybe when you're cooking too, when you have a little bit of water, you wouldn't put a whole lot. You don't eat a whole lot. You just.
But in some recipes it says 2 cups of water.
Maybe one recipe has a little bit. Like when you're putting a flavoring in your recipe, like vanilla or liquid, you just use a very little bit. So you call it a milliliter. Like a teaspoon or a tablespoon has 15 milliliters. There's 1 tablespoon. Okay.
Well, the students are going to do an activity right now. Let's make sure we understand what they're doing. They're putting the different units of measurement up on the board. They have, for example, kilograms, and they have grams. And then they will have up on the board liters and milliliters. So they have the large amounts and the small amounts. They have the solid and the liquid. And they're going to take the names of different things that they buy, food or things like that, and put them under the correct category that they would use to measure it. But just to make sure we understand what they're doing, let's look over some of these words together. The first thing they're looking at is spices. Spices are usually things that are like a powder, and we use it to give a good flavor to our food. And then they're looking at milk. Milk is something that is common in every culture. It's very good for you, and when you buy it, you usually buy a larger amount. You don't just buy a very small amount. Water, of course, you know what that is. In some cultures, they buy water in bottles or in big containers sometimes. Then they have cereal. Cereal usually comes from grains like wheat or barley or oats or things like that. And in our culture, we often have it for breakfast. There will be other things mixed in with it as well, and it's very good to eat. They talk about bread as well. Bread is common in every culture, but it sometimes looks a little different from one culture to the next. And bread, we don't usually measure it by weight or volume. Usually we just say a loaf of bread, a single serving of bread, that's a loaf. Or we also talk about things like candy. Candy, children always like, it's very sweet. And in our culture, we get candy often wrapped in little pieces. And you don't want a lot of candy because too much is not good for you. So you'd buy that in a small amount. Flour, of course, is one very common food. It comes from wheat. We use it to make bread and other things. When we buy flour, usually we buy a large quantity of it. Sugar is one thing they're talking about. Sugar is very sweet. It comes from plants. Sometimes it comes in different colors. But again, we usually buy a larger amount of it. Food flavorings is one thing she talks about. When you are baking things, sometimes you put in a little bit of liquid, and the liquid gives the food a special flavor. Vanilla is one flavor like this. So when you use this, you just use a very small amount. And so that's one of the other things they talk about. Let's join the class as they do this activity.
We're going to play a matching game. This is for again. Who can tell me what millimeters is used for? We were just talking about it. Yeah, a little amount or a lot? Little. Small amount, right. So I'll put this up here. Milliliters. What about this one? What's this one say? Liters. Is that used for a lot or a little bit? A lot. Liquids or solid? Liquids. Liquids. And then we have what's this one? Kilogram. What's that used for? For solid? Yeah. Rice. You buy it by a kilogram. You wouldn't want to buy rice by a gram, would you? You wouldn't get very much.
Where we have 700.
700 grams? Yeah, so that would be almost a kilo. Yeah.
Kilograms can be candies.
Candies. That would be a lot of candies too. Yeah? Does everybody like candy here? No? Does everybody like candy? Yes. What's this one? Chocolate? Grams. What's that used for?
Salad.
For solid?
A little bit.
A little bit. Like what?
Like
What would...
gold.
Pardon?
Gold.
Gold? A gram of gold? Yeah? Okay.
But maybe for gold we say correct. Yeah, but brilliant.
If it's a lot of gold, yeah, we could use kilogram. Okay, so you're each going to get a turn. I'm going to give you each a paper, and it's going to have a word written on it. And we're going to put it underneath the right measurement unit, okay? So we'll give this one to Tanya. You want to come up, Tanya? You want to come up? Where does this one go?
Spices.
Where would that go? Milliliters, liters, kilograms, or grams? Remember, would it be milliliters? No, because that's used for liquid. It's spice of liquid. No. What about liters? Would it go in there? No. Kilogram, that would be an awful lot of spices, wouldn't it? Grams, right. You want to put it underneath grams? Very good. Good job. Okay. Mika, you want to come up? What's this one say? We have milk. How would you measure milk? If you bought it, you buy it by a liter, right? You want to put it on? Good job. All right.